All right, Alan. Thanks for coming on the pod, and just to get you off, tell the audience a little bit about your background and your journey to your current role.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Brett. I appreciate you reaching out to get me on the podcast. So my background, let's see. Let's start with college. I graduated from the University of Texas at San Antonio in 2007, and was like every other college kid, not sure what he was going to do with his life, and kind of stumbled on a job with the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, which was a brand new team in at the time, the NBA D League, the Houston Rockets affiliate. And just like every other, sales professional, on the first day in that job, they threw a phone book in front of my face and said, start making calls. So I had to kind of learn on the fly at the time, and was with them for about a year and wanted to get back to a larger city. So applied for a job with the San Antonio Spurs, and they told me they actually had an opening with their development league team in Austin, the Austin Toros at the time, who are now the Austin Spurs. I've been with the organization now for just over 10 years and have seen my role, I guess, evolve into more of a premium type focus on the season ticket front. And that's also led me to doing some consulting and ticket sales training from a social selling standpoint with teams really all over the world.
That's awesome, and I love that. And one of the things that I've found, there's a lot of really good salespeople in sports that have started, with a more minor league team. So in your case, the G League. I had a background starting when I really started selling, in indoor lacrosse and women's soccer. So, what did you take, or what did you find in selling, for some of those minor leagues that you thought was really invaluable as you moved on in your career?
So the recommendation I would give every salesperson that's starting in the sports world is try to start in minor league sports, because it's not as a high demand product, obviously, as whether it's the NBA or the NFL or baseball, and you really learn all the facets of the business. So you're not only selling tickets, seasons, and groups, you're selling sponsorships. You're really getting to know where you think you'll fit down the road, and it really gives you that hunter mentality as well. So you're really having to make either whatever it is, 100 calls or 100 emails a day, and you're having to go find the business. The business isn't coming to you.
Yeah.
So it really helped me appreciate, now that I'm selling also for the San Antonio Spurs, that hunter mentality, and I've applied that to the NBA as well.
I've also found that, yeah, that's awesome. And I've also found that a little bit more of that global knowledge of the business itself makes you more passionate about sports business and your team too, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you really, you really appreciate what every single person does. We are at Austin Spurs home games. We're not only, servicing and selling our clients at the games, we're also setting up 2 hours to 3 hours before the games. We're tearing down after the game ends. So we're there usually, if the game ends at 9:45, usually there for an hour after the game. So until about 10:45. I mean, you're really learning every single aspect, from media relations to social media to operations with the arena, and working with the arena to make sure that everything runs smoothly at the game. So it's a lot more than just selling tickets.
And yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. It's really is a team effort, which does help you sell the organization a little bit more. And I think, and you can speak to this a little bit, but I also think as a salesperson, it makes you a little less risk averse, right? You're working for a big brand, you really don't want to screw it up. But with your minor league sports team, it's like, well, let's just try it. Like, let's just throw stuff out there and see how it goes.
And yeah, that's something we definitely, did with the Austin Spurs and are doing, is, little things like, I know influencer events are popular all over the place among sports teams, where you bring in someone of influence to try to help, high net worth people buy tickets. And we would host those, try them at $1 million homes. We try them at local steakhouses. We try them in our office during lunch, little things like that, where you can actually, design your own events and say, did this work or did this not work? what do we need to do differently next time? I mean, we've tried a lot of different things. Some have been very successful, and we've had events, in minor league sports that have generated over $40,000 in season tickets in one night, which,
Incredible.
when the average ticket price is $25 to $50, that's a lot of tickets to sell in one night. But then we've had events that, you know, generated less than $10,000. So it's trying to figure out what kind of events work, and then how do you modify them for next time to make them better.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree more. And 40,000 is a lot. There's no doubt about it. So as you were getting into sales, I found that a lot of who you are as a salesperson is shaped really early on in your sales career, which makes, a lot of those key influences really, really important. So as you're getting going in sales, who were some of your key influences, and what was it about their styles or their successes that really stood out to you as something you wanted to emulate?
So my going back to my first job with the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, the NBA has a group that obviously you're familiar with because you used to work with them.
Yep.
Called TEAMBO, which stands for Team Marketing and Business Operations. And literally my first ever face-to-face meeting with a prospect down with the Vipers, I had a guy from TEAMBO who's still with TEAMBO now named Jerry Murphy on my meeting. And he always likes to tell this story when we're laughing about, the olden days. But we went on a meeting, and I believe it was with a logistics company, and they were considering, 4 floor seats. And I had one of those pens, that clicks on and off. And the entire meeting, and maybe because I was super nervous and I was 22 years old, the entire meeting I was clicking the pen on and off. So as soon as we got out of the meeting, Jerry says to me, "I'm never letting you take one of those click pens into a meeting ever again." I was just really nervous. It was my first ever meeting, and he's kind of been a mentor and a voice for me ever since then. I mean, he's been, like I said, since my first meeting, and he's actually still our TEAMBO rep with the Austin Spurs now as well. So I definitely bounce ideas off him all the time. He had a major ticket sales background working for the Washington Wizards and the Capitals before he was with the NBA. Another guy, the guy that hired me with the Austin Toros, now Austin Spurs, his name is Billy Widener, and he's actually working with Amazon now. But he, took a chance on a 22-year-old kid who had only sold for 10 months and brought him, moved me out of my hometown, McAllen, Texas, and moved me up to Austin, and just gave me an opportunity when not many others would. And then my second boss with the Austin Toros was, his name was Peter Lubell, and he really taught me discipline, really digging in while you're at work and focusing and trying to reach as many people a day as possible. And now my current boss, Tim Salier, who has really allowed me to spread my wings from a social selling standpoint. The old school was always smile and dial, but he's really allowed me to make me feel like I'm running my own business and doing my thing every day. And on a daily basis, I'll reach out to him. Hey, what do you think of this prospect, or what I'm doing with this client? But he's really allowed me to make me feel like I'm running my own business. And then the last one, also with TEAMBO, Justin Gurney, he works with the NBA, and he's probably been the loudest voice from the NBA standpoint on spreading the message about social selling. A lot of our, leaders are starting to embrace this across the NBA, the WNBA, and the G League. So thank you to Justin for also bouncing ideas with me all the time, but allowing, social selling to become more of a mainstream thing with the NBA sales circles.
Yeah, and we'll certainly talk a little bit more about social selling a little later on in the podcast. But I think one of the things that does, I mean, it is part of your social selling, but I think was so unique about your sales process is just the discipline that you do take into every day. So can you describe your sales process a little, and how do you find that incredibly consistent success that you have, on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis?
So it's the normal day starts at 8:30 in the office. I'm there at 7:30 on a normal day because I need all that time to focus, to dig down and get to those 100 prospects a day. So it's using, Google and LinkedIn, looking at the business journal, but being creative with your searches. So not just searching, the obvious companies. It's reaching out to 7 or 8 people in an individual company, not just one, because chances are if you just do one, they're going to delete it or not respond. So it's really reaching out to the top 7 or 8 executives you can find. It's using public records to your advantage. So, you can pull a list in anywhere in the United States by county of someone that owns an airplane in your county. And, there's 1,000 people in our area that have airplanes. So why not reach out to them, cross-check LinkedIn to figure out what they do. Using your appraisal district, your county appraisal district, so you can actually search, you could type in a street name for someone's street that lives on a wealthy street, and it'll pull the name and value of every home on that street. Well, obviously, if someone's living in a 7-figure plus home, it's someone that probably needs to be reached out to from a premium sales standpoint. Using political donors to your advantage, who's donating by political parties. Those are great lists that you can find. People that are donating lots of money, obviously, they can spend a lot of money on tickets. Using mutual connections to your advantage. So anytime that you sell someone, instead of, we were always taught, old school, ask for referrals. And I would always get the response, well, let me think about it and get back to you. Well, why not do your homework ahead of time at the meeting and go through their LinkedIn connections, write down 5 names that they're connected to, and instead of just blindly asking for referrals, actually ask for 5 names that they're connected to and see how they react differently that way. That's been a huge plus for me from a meeting standpoint. I don't get any individual game buyer leads. I don't get any leads at all. I mean, all I'm doing 100% self-prospecting. I haven't made a cold call in over 5 years, and I'm just really trying to cast the widest net possible by averaging 10 meetings per week, and hopefully that leads to about 2 to 3 new deals per week.
It's incredible, and I think that discipline of 10 meetings a week, 100 reaches out a day, that's something that's so rare in this industry. But when you see it, I mean, there's no doubt that success follows. And one of the things that I think that you said that is going to take a lot of people aback, and I've literally watched you say it and have it take people back, is that you don't call ticket buyers, you don't call any of those leads. So to you, what is the value in a self-prospected lead, and why do those leads close at a higher rate? Why do they close for more money? What is it about self-prospected leads that leads to such success in sports?
I just feel like they've been vetted. Not that individual game buyers aren't vetted, but normally, they're not buying the super high dollar seats. With the business owners, they're looking at it from a different perspective. This is something that we can do to entertain clients or show our appreciation for our employees. And my email is very upfront on why I want to meet with these people. That's the other thing, is it's very blunt. It says, wanted to invite you out to the arena to look at our ticket packages for either personal or for business, and would love, 15 minutes of your time. And the meetings rarely ever last 15 minutes. They usually get closer to an hour. But the fact that they're going to travel to the arena to meet with you, it means that there's some level of interest. Chances are they've already been to a game before. So now you're getting them in to actually, maybe they've never been approached, for season tickets. So now you're getting them in, and hopefully they see the value by you building that relationship throughout the meeting, memorizing their LinkedIn profile. So if there's something that you can mention or name drop that's in their profile that might be some sort of mutual connection, whether it's the college they attended or something like that, all those things go into helping you make that sale.
Isn't there such an advantage to being direct these days in sales, right? Like, so there's so many people that feel like they're trying to be tricked into buying something every day. What advantage is it for you with how direct you are? Because I've seen the LinkedIn message that you send. I've seen your sales process. You're very direct in the way that you go about it. Why do you think that's such an advantage to you?
Because I think people's time is so much more important nowadays and limited between work, family, and other obligations. that, let's just be honest with each other. If you're not interested in meeting and it doesn't make sense, then either just tell me or not respond. I just think that's probably the most important thing, because I don't want to waste someone's time. And honestly, my time is limited as well, so I don't want them to waste my time.
And I think that gets back to, the discipline to reach out to 100 people a day too, right? Because you're reaching out to so many people that you're not worried if one person says no, right? And we have so many reps who get so worried that someone's going to say no that, they forget that the back end of that is the more people that you put into the funnel, the less worried you have to be about where the next sale's coming from.
Oh, 100%. And what I like about obviously the email approach plus the 100 a day is that I'll get an email from someone that I emailed 3 weeks ago, maybe on a Saturday or Sunday, saying, hey, I realized I never get back to you, but I'm really interested in meeting. So you're not only, obviously positioning yourself by hitting 100 today, but the 100 from 3 weeks ago, all of a sudden, it might not have been on their radar at the time, but they had your email. And if the Spurs came up or if your sports team came up in some sort of topic, it might trigger something where they're like, hey, I need to buy Spurs tickets. And I remember there was a guy that emailed me 3 weeks ago. So those are the kind of added bonuses that come along with the process.
Totally. And so one of the things that I want to ask, because I think it's interesting, is getting away from just the 100 reach outs a day, knowing that you get so many people into conversation. How do you organize yourself to make sure that you don't have leads or sales opportunities that are falling through the cracks?
Sorry, I kind of lost you there.
Sorry, we should be back. We should be back now. How do you make sure that with all the breaches out that you're doing, that all the leads that you have aren't falling through the cracks?
Well, I mean, that's part of kind of taking risks, because I usually only will put them into our CRM or database if they actually, acknowledge me. I feel like I have no ownership over a potential lead if I emailed them and they never emailed back. And I kind of feel the same way about like voicemails. If you left a voicemail for someone, but they never got back to you, I don't know if that should be, owned by a salesperson.
Agreed.
So, I'm sure I'm taking a risk by not putting all of them into our CRM, but in order for me to work as quickly as possible and hit my daily goals, it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make, because I'm also a big believer of karma. So, if someone says, hey, I saw you reached out to this person, what do you think? And I always tell the other rep, go for it. I never had any conversation. You're better off closing, because I think that at some point, it'll come back to you.
Yeah, no doubt. And so you're a bit of a social selling guru right now. So, there's two questions here, but I think they're going to kind of mix. So what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give to a sales rep that you see struggling with? How do I navigate utilizing LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook? And, my boss, my manager is telling me to use them. I'm not really getting good training on it. I don't know how to use them. What would be that big piece of advice that you'd give to the rep?
It's really just focusing. There's so many distractions in our daily lives, in our office lives. So here's what I do. I put my headphones on and put on some music and just go and block out everything else that's going on around me, and really focus on, okay, so 100 a day, if you break it down, and this is assuming you don't have any meetings on that day, that's 8 people an hour roughly on a given day. So it's making sure that you're not only hitting the 100 a day, but the 8 an hour to get to that 100 a day. It's trying to think more creative on, there's the obvious big companies in your market, so in Austin, we have Google, Facebook, Oracle, all the big software companies. Those are the obvious ones. But what are the companies that nobody else is hitting? The smaller businesses that do a lot of revenue and have done very well, but have never been approached. So it's thinking creatively. It's not resting on your last sale, because you're only, I've heard the phrase, you're only as good as your last sale. Well, if you sell something today at 10 a.m., it's not taking the rest of the day off. It's saying, okay, how am I going to get to that next sale? It's just a lot of commitment. on an individual's part to really focus. And that's what I tell, new sales reps when they're starting, because I've mentored a lot of different sales reps, and I tell them, if you have a LinkedIn profile, it doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to be a master at social selling just because you create a profile.
Totally.
You have to learn how to use it to your advantage. You have to interact with other people through LinkedIn. And the more people you add, and I don't add people blindly, I'll just, state that I add people once they've acknowledged me. The more your network grows, the more sales you'll eventually make. One thing that, obviously I've taken an untraditional route in the way I sell. And one thing that really, makes me happy is when I'm on a meeting and somebody asks, how did you find me? Because that comes up in about 50% of my meetings. So you're doing something right when that comes up.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I mean, there's two questions I got from that, but I think the first one's that is you talked about mid-sized and smaller businesses that are still doing well. Tell me why you like those types of businesses, because I loved them. I thought they were outside of the fact that, they probably haven't been called, I found them to be really appreciative that they're being called.
Yeah, no, it's always funny when a smaller to medium-sized business CEO or owner tells you, thank you for reaching out to me. I'm like, you're the one that's doing me the favor, obviously. But I appreciate them because, I think they can make decisions faster.
Totally.
Because usually there's less people involved in the decision-making, less, bureaucratic stuff that has to go up the chain or down the chain. And they're just easier to deal with, throughout the season as well from a service standpoint. So, and you can really help them. And what's funny is like you end up growing together. Like I've had one client in particular in my mind in Austin who was in the basically like the IT recruiting field. I've seen them grow from when they started with me on season tickets. They were doing $2 million a year, and I think this year they did $15 million in revenue.
That's incredible.
And I've tried to help as much as I can along the way with introductions, but it's just fun to watch us grow together.
Yeah. And I think your ability to educate them during that process about how you can help them. I mean, Oracle and Google, they know. They've seen that sales pitch hundreds of times by every team in different states. Like Bank of America has a huge database of every ticket that they own for every team everywhere. A lot of these mid-sized companies, you really are educating them. And to your point, that really does help you grow, help they grow. And then the relationship between them and the team grows from a monetary standpoint because of that.
I kind of lost there again.
Oh, sorry. So they were just talking about like the growth that mid-sized companies can have. The next thing is that I think is really important. When you have a meeting in a day, does that mean that you're taking yourself off the hook for going out on, getting your 100 leads out there that day?
So it definitely makes it more challenging to get to the 100, and this is a tip I recently shared on LinkedIn. What I'm doing is I'm looking while I'm sitting at that Starbucks or that coffee shop. I'm looking at LinkedIn while I'm waiting, and I'm screenshotting profiles of people that I'm going to go after, later in the day. So that way I don't really have to be prospecting once I'm back at my desk. It's more, looking up the people that I've already looked up and then finding their contact information. So it's just speeding up the process, knowing that your time is going to be a little more limited on that day.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that goes down to, a rep will have a good meeting or they'll make a sale, and then they're so happy about it that it's 2 hours before they make that next phone call, and they lose so much opportunity. And so that discipline that you're talking about, I think, is so critical for salespeople.
Yeah, no, it's very important because I've seen what you're saying from reps. I had a great meeting. It's already 3:00, so I can kind of coast the rest of the day, and that's not something that I would promote.
So outside of the discipline and the social selling, you've got a vantage point now that you're doing some training for teams. What are some of the other challenges that, whether it's with Austin or San Antonio or some of the stuff that you're training, what's another challenge that you see sales reps are having, right now in 2018? And, what do you do to either teach them or avoid it yourself?
I think more so, you come in brand new and there's other reps that have been there a long time. So it's trying to learn from them, and hopefully they're open to that. It's continually studying, getting better, and we all work a lot of hours, but it's really, at night, am I reading a book to help me get better on social selling or selling in general? Am I taking tips from other reps in the office? Am I, helping out other departments or doing events outside of the office to continue to build my network? Because I think that's the hardest part. And, for me, I've been selling Austin Spurs for 10 years, so I consider my Austin network great. But I've only been selling San Antonio Spurs for really roughly 5 or 6 months. And so I've really tried to put in overdrive on trying to build my network in the San Antonio area to, help me put myself in the best position to succeed. And I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job so far, but I'm just continually trying to find new connections in that area that can help me grow my network.
That's awesome. I think it's so important that reps continue to put themselves out there in the communities that they're in, especially if it's not home. A lot of times, sales reps that get in there, they don't put themselves out in the community. They don't attend networking events. And then they use that as an excuse for when the rep you've hired from that hometown, makes a sale to their mother, brother, sister, cousin. When I think a lot of times, a lot of the best reps that I've ever seen are the ones that came from outside and from where they live and have thrown themselves into that community and environment because at some point, that person who's got all the sales that's from that hometown, that dries up a little bit. And if those are the only people you've been selling, you struggle. But if you throw yourself into that community, it's amazing the success that you'll see because people tend to really genuinely appreciate that.
Oh, I agree 100%. And then I've also found, though, sometimes the reps that are from that city are almost like afraid to ask their network, for money. It's especially when they're new, it makes it, a little more challenging for them because they're not always comfortable saying, oh, I've been with this business owner, a family friend for 10, 15 years, but I don't feel comfortable asking them for money. So it's also educating those reps that, you have to get over that fear. The worst they can tell you, just like everybody else, is no.
That's awesome. And I think that leads well to this next question. Knowing how busy you are and how unique your role is and has been, and how good you've been at it, how do you create a positive work life balance?
So that's definitely an ongoing learning process, I'll say. I mean, it's trial and error. I push myself as hard as I can during business hours, so that way, I feel like, oh, okay, I gave all I could to work today, and now I'm going to give all my, everything, my attention to my wife tonight. She's also in sales and is doing amazing work for a software company. So I think, her and I have an understanding on that front. So we both understand the grind, and we're continually pushing each other. But on the weekends, we definitely make time for each other to spend quality time together.
And are there any hints or tricks you can give someone? Because I think a lot of those challenges are, and I was going through this past year is with how busy we can be during the season. What are like hints and tricks that you can do to keep your focus sharp and to keep those relationships outside of work sharp too?
So it's really, trying as much as you can, and it's not easy to do 100%. But when you're not at a game or not working and you do have a free weekend, disconnecting as much as you can. Obviously, you can never disconnect 100% because that dinner you're having at that restaurant could be your next lead. But it's really giving them your undivided attention to either your spouse or your friends or whoever, your family, when you're there with them. Try to be in the moment, try to enjoy each other's company. And then obviously in the off season, take a little time. I always try to take some sort of trip, with my wife after the season ends, go somewhere and at least disconnect for a little bit.
That last piece of advice I think is so critical. You're going to find a lot of young sales reps that say, "Oh, I can't afford that. I can't afford to do that." Budget that out. Put that in a separate box. Don't touch that. Let that grow across the course of the year. Let that dictate the trip that you're going to take. But find a way. even if it's during the season, when when you have a run of not having a lot of games or right after the season, just get away and make sure that when you get away, you really are getting away. I think hitting the reset button every once in a while is just it's so underrated.
Yeah, it's easy to burn out, in this business, and I've seen it from people. So I would say, take a 4, 5, 6 day trip somewhere after the season. You earned it. You worked your tail off. You probably worked for anywhere from 20 to 50 home games, depending on playoffs and stuff. And so it's good to let yourself and either your spouse, your friends, or family unwind, and remember that you're starting from scratch now. So erase any bad stuff that may have happened from the past season or sales didn't go your way, and come back refreshed and ready to roll and start fresh for the next year.
And not just that, but one of the things I used to always tell my sales reps is you've got vacation days, use them, right? Like even if it's a day here, a day there, you're not going to impress me if we get to the end of the year and you only took one vacation day. That's not impressive to me. I'm probably going to worry about you personally if that's the case.
Definitely.
Cool. And so I want to ask this question at the end of every podcast because I think it's always unique to hear this answer from different people, and I love asking this question. But Alan, what drives you?
So to continually better my process and continually not only meet goals but exceed goals, I would like to be known as an industry leader for social selling. I've enjoyed spreading, the message about social selling by working with other sports teams around the world, and I hope I can continue to help others get better. I mean, I've really enjoyed the teaching. I've been in such a focused sales role for the last 10 years, 11 years, I guess, if you include the other team I worked with, that I've really enjoyed, sales reps from around really the world. I mean, I've worked with now a rugby team in Australia. They just bounce ideas off me or ask me like, hey, Alan, and I usually respond to just about everyone if I have the time to do it on LinkedIn. What do you think of this idea? Or, Brett and I, you and I partnered. We went to Chicago with Bill Gertine and did a whole training for a couple of days. One of the reps that was at that training recently reached out to me and said they closed a 6-figure deal as a result of some social selling tips they picked up. And they're a first-year rep in the NHL. So to think, like, I love hearing stuff like that, and I want to continue, to use my LinkedIn as a way to promote those people, mention, hey, congratulations to so-and-so for closing a 6-figure deal by using, this tip that you learned from LinkedIn or something like that. So I just want to continue to help others get better because I think, we're all going to continue to learn from each other, and all the trainings that I do, I want to pick up at least one tip from each team. And so that's something I strive to do as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that servant leadership will pay off in good juju. But, I think the thing that's been so great I believe that I'm a better salesperson for teaching sales because as thoughtful a salesperson as I was, I'm 10 times, 15 times more thoughtful in my approach and the way that I go about it. And, I believe, iron sharpens iron. So if I continue to stay diligent in learning about sales, there isn't going to be something that happens in sales that I don't believe that I'm ready for, not just to teach, but for me to go out and sell and do it as well.
Agree 100%. Even if you're the number one salesperson in your industry or organization, you can always continue to get better and pick up new tips.
I mean, the thing I hate the most is that one person that's always in every sales training that's like, I'm too good for this. And they're like, man, for women, you're going to be in that role for a long period of time. So that's not the mentality that makes truly great salespeople or truly great athletes or whatever it is great. It's that fear that someone's going to catch up to them at some point that's why, a lot of times you become better.
100% agree. I mean, we can all continue to learn from each other. I'm sure there's a first-year rep somewhere right now selling some tickets that could teach a 25-year rep some new tricks.
100%. Well, listen, Alan, I appreciate you jumping on. I'm excited that you get to be the first person that does this and look forward to continuing to stay in touch and continuing to marvel at your career and what you continue to do. from now just a couple hundred miles away.
Thank you, Brett, and looking forward to seeing your successes grow as well in your new endeavor.
Appreciate it, bud.